or the accuracy of our findings. So you would realize that the objectives from number 2 up to the last one are already the steps in qualitative data analysis. So we hope that we will be able to touch on each of the steps and have a thorough understanding of how these steps happen, how they are done, no, in order for us to come up with qualitative results. Okay, so again, these are the things that we hope to achieve at the end of our webinar session. Okay, now I would like to begin with our discussion on qualitative data analysis by defining what qualitative research is. Okay, because from the definition, we can have a deeper understanding of the processes that happen in relation to analyzing qualitative data, right? So when we define qualitative research, it's a type of research that calls for the investigator to enter into the lives of the persons being studied as fully and naturally as possible. So what we can actually appreciate from qualitative research apart from or different from quantitative research is how we look at the subjects of our study. In qualitative research, we actually look at our subjects or participants as a total person, as a whole person, no? Because our goal is to actually gain an in-depth, holistic perspective of groups of people, environments, programs, events, or any phenomenon we wish to study, no, by interacting closely with the people that we are studying. It's quite different when we actually analyze phenomenon in the lens of quantitative research, because we know that in quantitative research, it's considered to be specific, right? So from a theory, we actually draw specific concepts that we would like to test, no? That is why we have hypothesis testing, no, as part of our way of analyzing the quantitative data, okay? But in qualitative research, our attack here, our approach here is in depth, it's holistic, because we would want to have a clearer picture, no, of people's perspective or the things that is happening in a certain phenomenon or a certain event, okay? And usually, in quantitative research, things occur in natural settings, no? Most especially when we're doing ethnographic studies, when we are, say, for example, studying about the life of our indigenous groups. So what we do is that we study their way of life in their natural setting where they are naturally behaving, diba? So if we would want to, say, for example, study the life of indigenous groups, you might opt to go to their tribe, no, or to their inhabitat, no, so that you will be able to naturally observe their behaviors, because those are the settings where they naturally behave, okay? Also, in qualitative research, we do not establish theory or hypothesis a priori. Okay, so ibig sabihin, in qualitative research, there is no need for you to come up with a theoretical framework, though some may actually use a theoretical lens, but it's not always necessarily needed. Okay, so ibig sabihin, unlike in quantitative research where we draw our hypothesis from the theory, in qualitative research, our goal is for us to come up with a theory, most especially if you are, say, for example, doing a grounded theory where you actually develop a theory from your data, diba? That is why it's also considered emergent rather than tightly refigured, no? Kasi in quantitative research, everything is considered to be preset. Like, say, for example, just before you go with your data collection, it's important for you that you have your questionnaire, or your questionnaire finalized already just before you go on with your data collection. However, in qualitative research, everything is considered to be emergent. You would actually realize in qualitative research that at the time when you are gathering your data and realize that the data that you collected are not sufficient enough, then you can actually go back to your participants and collect more data. Unlike in quantitative research where you cannot actually go back to the previous steps because things are considered to be tightly prefigured or preset. Okay. And then the data that emerge from qualitative data are considered to be descriptive, meaning that the presentation of the data that we have for qualitative studies are considered to be in words. They are textual in nature. Thus, the material that we use are considered to be text data. Okay. Some may use images or pictures to actually serve as their data for a qualitative data. If you are asking, how about in quantitative research, diba? Kasi we also have what we call descriptive studies in quantitative research. Yeah, in quantitative research, we have descriptive approaches or studies, but what we mean by descriptive in that sense is that we are describing still the numbers, no? However, in qualitative research, what we are describing are considered to be the meanings that we get out of or that we derive off from our participants' responses or transcripts, okay? And that the presentation of the data are considered to be textual in nature, okay? Now, looking at the different qualitative research designs, you would realize that a particular research design would be equal to a particular type of analysis. No? So this is where we realize that, again, there is no single way in terms of analyzing the data, because the type of analysis that goes onto the type of research design that we implement in a qualitative research. Okay, so if we are to look at the different qualitative research designs, we can see a couple of this in the screen, but these are not the totality of the research designs in qualitative approach. There are many actually, but these are considered to be the popular or the common ones. So examples of this would be phenomenology, ethnography, grounded theory, narrative inquiry, qualitative case study, and basic qualitative research. Now, what sets these research designs apart from the other designs in research, specifically in terms of quantitative research, is that the variables can be or can only be logically and substantially investigated through the gathering of qualitative data, which means that the material that we used out of conducting this qualitative research design would solely depend on text, would solely depend on images, would solely depend on documents, okay? And we have to realize that this type of data that we collect from this type of designs are considered to be rare, okay? So there is rarity of source of data because the people that we study actually in this type of research designs are considered to be special. That is why we call them special population. So having said that, what we do in qualitative research is that we actually specialize on a group of people which presents a special case which interests us. And at that point, we actually gather data. So we would not expect that we will get a lot of data from a large pool of people, because there are certain qualifications that we set out of a particular study. Like say, for example, in my case, when I did my master's thesis, and my study is all about house husbands with absentee wives, the fact that I am studying house husbands is already considered to be special, 'di ba? Kasi house husband is not a common phenomenon for men, 'di ba? So hindi lahat ng mga lalaki undergoes this type of circumstance where they become the primary caregiver of the family, no? But what makes my participants is that study more special is that they are considered to be house husbands with absentee wives, meaning that these are house husbands where their wives are not present with them, no? In the household. Kasi merong mga house husbands naman na sila yung nag-aalaga sa kanilang mga anak from 8 to 5 because their wives need to work outside of the home, 'di ba? And becomes the primary provider, no, and the breadwinner for the family. But then after 5, they can go back at home and perform the tasks normally done by women, no, or by mothers, like yung cooking, yung taking care of their children. So basically, there is still that division of labor in terms of household chores. However, in the case of my participants who are considered to be house husbands with absentee wives, they're performing their role, no, as primary caregivers single-handedly because their wives are not present with them because they're working abroad. Okay, so they are working overseas. That is why they cannot really get help from their partners or from their wives, no, in relation to household chores and caregiving. So that makes it special, no, and that is the reason why we considered rarity of source of data in qualitative research designs. Okay. Now, there are different forms of data that we can gather in terms of doing qualitative research. No? For John Creswell, there are 4 basic types of data that can be collected depending on the methodology to be used. Number 1 would be observations. And observations would depend on our written field notes. No? If you experience already doing an observation, most of the time, your material for observation would be your field note, diba? So what we do is that we bring with us a notebook and that we write down or jot down, no, yung mga observations that we have in relation to a person or to a group of people or to a phenomenon that we are investigating, diba? So that's one. Another is interview, and interviews are taken from audio recordings of conversations. So example of this would be your one-to-one interview with your participants, or it can be a panel interview with your group of participants, okay? The third one is documents. You would actually see researches now that make use of documents. No, examples of this would be diary recordings of activities or thoughts. So there are researches that make use of journals in investigating the thought patterns or the emotions, no, that are expressed by their participants in a diary or in a journal. Okay, so documents can be used as a form of data for qualitative research. And the last one would be audiovisual materials. Okay, examples of this would be video recordings of activities. So if you are, like, say for example, doing a documentary, say for example, you're documenting the life of a particular individual. So definitely what you can capture from your camera or from your video recorder can be a source of data, no, for doing a qualitative research. No? Yung mga documentaries na ginagawa ng mga TV shows natin, no, like say for example, yung notebook, ano yan, yung reporter's notebook, sa GMA7, no, yung mga documentaries na ginagawa nila doon, actually they can convert those documentaries into researches, no. So what they just need to do is to transform those audiovisual materials to text data so that they can come up with a data to be used for qualitative data analysis. All right? Okay. Now, The difference between quantitative and qualitative data would be in terms of the depth of information that we can gather from our participants. In fact, when we look at qualitative data, it can present depth of information on the following matters. No, example would be thoughts, views, and interpretations. Like say, for example, if you would want to make a study about um, the views of students in relation to online learning, 'di ba? Without having to use a survey or a checklist, you can actually dig deeper in terms of the thoughts or views of our participants if you make an interview or you perform or conduct an interview. No, because it's from there where you can actually dig deeper in terms of their thoughts or their views regarding an issue or a particular situation, diba? So in that case, if you're interested to know in terms of the experiences of students learning online, now you can dig deeper in terms of finding out kung ano ba yung mga challenges na pagdadaanan nila in terms of learning online, and what could be the possible strategies that they do to cope up with the demands, no, or to cope up with the stresses or the pressures that they get out of learning online. Okay. The second one would be in relation to priorities and importance. So this is where we can actually get greater appreciation of qualitative data, because you can actually ask people in relation to how they prioritize certain things or put importance on certain things. Like say, for example, if you would want to make a study in terms of school leaders in relation to their priorities set in relation to mitigating the effects of COVID-19 in terms of the school experiences of our learners, no? So probably pwedeng i-ask mo yung mga school heads in terms of what is considered to be most and least important for them in terms of the priority set in relation to mitigating the effects of COVID-19 in education, 'di ba? So yon, isa yon sa pwedeng gawin mo as a study by looking at the priorities and importance that we can gather from qualitative data. The third one would be in relation to processes and practices, okay? Like say, for example, if you would want to make a study in relation to how healthcare workers take care of a COVID patient. So kung yun yung particular na study mo, you can actually dig deeper in terms of the processes and the practices they do, no, in relation to taking care of a COVID patient. So by qualitative data, you can actually present rich information on how on the steps involved in taking care of a COVID-19 patient, no, or you can even present best practices in relation to taking care of COVID-19 patients in the lens of healthcare workers as frontliners in this pandemic situation, diba? So that can be another way or opportunity of research dealing with qualitative data. The fourth one would be intended effects of action. So this is where we actually use qualitative data to see the effects of certain actions. Like say, for example, if you implemented a particular intervention among your participants or to your students, it's a teaching intervention that you implemented, and from your quantitative data, you have found out that it's effective. Now, what you need to do is to dig deeper in terms of why it is effective, no? Because what you could already prove in quantitative data is that it is effective, but asking the question why it is effective can be another research, no? And it can be done through qualitative research dealing with qualitative data. So you might want to ask why this particular intervention is effective for this group of students and why this is not effective for a group of students, no? Or if, like say, for example, you are interested to know in terms of the effects of certain experiences like experience of disaster or natural calamity to people, then you can actually conduct an interview to investigate the intended effects of that natural disasters, like say for example in their mental health or in their well-being, 'di ba? So again, you can dig deeper in terms of those concerns, no, and issues when you're dealing with qualitative data. And then the fifth one would be depth of information in relation to feelings and experiences. So it is in qualitative data that we can actually gather more information on how people feel about certain things or about certain phenomenon. Like say for example, again, no, if you're not particularly interested in terms of the thoughts and views of students in relation to online learning, probably you would want to deal more in terms of the emotions that they have in relation to online learning. Probably some of them might be feeling depressed, some of them might be feeling anxious, some of them might be feeling challenged, no, in relation to learning online. So in order for you to really have an idea in terms of their experiences in relation to those events or circumstances, then you can actually conduct a qualitative research dealing with qualitative data, right? Okay. Now, it is in this point when we need to realize, or we need to realize that getting good qualitative results depends solely on the researcher. Okay, this is different from our results in quantitative research, no? Because we have to remember that in quantitative research, we can actually even hire people, no, to do the other things for us in relation to getting good qualitative results. Example would be in terms of data collection. In quantitative research, you can actually hire encoder or enumerator to collect data for you, because that's what we did when we conducted our study on HIV. No, so when we had our study on HIV, we collected samples from all over Pampanga. So we went to all the towns in Pampanga and gathered data. Now, as the team or the project leader in that particular study, I cannot actually collect those data on my own. So what I did is that I hired 15 enumerators and coders, no, in that study to make or to do the data collection for me, no. And in terms of analyzing the data, I also hire another person that happens to be a statistician, not to analyze the data for me. So the only thing that I did basically in terms of the results in my study is to present and write the results. No, however, in qualitative research, we cannot actually assign those tasks to anybody else. No, that is why we have to realize that getting good qualitative results depends on the quality of the data collector, the quality of the data analyzer, and the quality of the presenter or writer. No, where all of these things is performed by the qualitative researcher. Ibig sabihin, you cannot pass on this task to anybody else, no, in qualitative research. It's only you that can perform all of these tasks, no, in your research. That is the very reason why we put high premium in terms of capacitating, empowering our qualitative researchers, because everything depends on them in terms of getting good qualitative results. Unlike in quantitative research, where you can pass on certain tasks to someone else more qualified than you. But in qualitative research, everything depends on you, starting from data collection to data analysis and data presentation and write-up. Okay, so that's the very reason why we also have this type of webinar, because this is our way of capacitating, empowering our qualitative researchers. Okay, and realize that everything depends on you in relation to getting good qualitative results. Okay, now this is the point where we now discuss the types of qualitative analysis, which is the core of this webinar session. Okay, so again, what we need to realize at this point in my talk is that there is no single way or method in terms of analyzing qualitative data, as there are different ways of analyzing data qualitatively depending on the nature, purpose, and objectives, no, of the study. Okay. All right. So the following are considered to be the common types of qualitative data analysis. So we have thematic analysis, content analysis, grounded analysis, discourse analysis, narrative analysis, and heuristic or phenomenological analysis. Now, you can actually see that this type of analysis are considered to be related to a type of research design in qualitative approach. No, like say for example, when we speak of grounded analysis, no, grounded analysis is a type of analysis that we do for qualitative grounded theory approach or grounded research. Okay. Whereas when we talk about narrative analysis, this is the type of analysis that we use when we are performing or we are conducting a narrative research. When we speak of heuristic analysis or phenomenological analysis, this is a type of analysis that is used specifically in conducting phenomenological studies. So, which means that a particular type of analysis would be matched with a particular type of research. Okay. What are considered to be fundamental types of analysis here are thematic and content analysis, which means that this type of analysis can be done in other types of research because these are considered to be the fundamental methods for qualitative data analysis. No? So, and you will realize that even if there are different types of analysis, what is considered to be common among them would be thematic analysis. Meaning na yung mga steps involved in thematic analysis are also present in the other types of analysis. The only difference here is that the type of analysis specific to a type of research may have additional step in them. Like say, for example, when you speak of a narrative analysis, it may follow particular steps in thematic analysis, but there would be additional steps such as the abstraction, no, of certain concepts, no, related to the narrative presented by our participants. Okay. Right. So what we will do is that we will be discussing this one by one. All right. So at this point, by the way, do we have any question? Sorry ha, hindi ko nakikita yung ating mga, yung ano natin, yung page natin sa Google Meet. So if there would be any questions raised at this point, can I ask the MC of this webinar to raise the questions? Meron po ba tayong tanong so far? Or if you would want to ask a question, you can actually just turn on your microphone and ask your question. And I will be willing to answer for those questions. Meron ba so far tayong tanong regarding our discussion? Okay, clear naman po ba yung discussion natin? Hello? Meron po tayong tanong. Do we have any question? So can we now proceed to the next slide?
Yes po, sir.
All right. Okay. So now, let's identify each of the types of qualitative data analysis. All right. So the first one is thematic analysis. Now, thematic analysis is the commonly used and fundamental method for qualitative data analysis. So again, when we speak of thematic analysis, this is the basic type of analysis that we use for qualitative research. Okay. The goal of actually using thematic analysis is to present a clear picture of the themes emerged from our participants' transcripts. No? So, ibig sabihin, from your interviews, no, we draw the themes that we get out of their responses in a question or responses in a particular particular objective. Okay, so in thematic analysis, what we draw from participants' transcripts are what we call codes. So codes are considered to be the units of analysis that we use to represent our participants' responses. Okay, so say for example, we are conducting a particular study, and initially we gather these codes, such as the words active, willing, accountable, responsible, and motivated. So which means that these are the words that we got directly from our participants' responses to a question, okay? And then from these codes, what we do is that we group or cluster them together to come up with a theme. So theme is considered to be the broader concept that represents the codes that we got out of our participants' transcript. And by looking at these codes, we realize that they can be grouped together in a concept we call individual participation. Okay, so again, when we look at the process of thematic analysis, this is what we call inductive process. No, inductive process meaning that we actually take from the specific units, no, some general terms. Okay, so again, when we speak of inductive approach, this is moving from specific to general. No, so in this example, the codes here are considered to be the specific units that we get directly from our participants. And then from those specific units, we actually make them more general. We make them broader in a sense, no? So that we can best represent all these codes to a particular concept, okay? So in this case, all these codes that we gather from our participants are clustered, grouped together to come up with a theme that is considered to be general, no? So para itong classification na ginagawa natin, like say for example, if we are to classify living things, diba? So living things can be classified more specifically to say for example, plants and animals. So plants and animals are considered to be your themes. And then when you look at the theme, you can get more specific units of those, no? We call codes. So under the theme of animal, you can have dog, cat, fish, diba? Goat, cow. So those units are what we call codes, okay? That are grouped together, we call theme. On the other hand, when we speak of plants, plants is considered to be the theme. So under plant, we can have vegetables, fruits, flowers. So all of those are considered to be your codes that can be grouped together in a broader concept we call plants. Okay, so that is how we actually do it in thematic analysis. No? So from the codes, we derive a broader concept we call theme or category. Okay, so again, the purpose of using thematic analysis as your type of analysis is for you to present a clear picture of the themes that emerge out of your participants' transcripts or responses. Now, the second one is what we call content analysis. Now, you will realize that content analysis is also similar to thematic analysis. The only difference is that the study purpose for this type of analysis is to look for frequency of words, patterns, and sequence of occurrence of words. So which means that it is in this type of analysis where numbers or frequencies are important, no? But again, the steps that are involved in content analysis is similar to thematic analysis, okay? So let's take this example. So for example, our study is about college students' needs. So we want to find out the needs of our college students, no? So from this type of study, we were able to gather initial codes, and the codes that we gather from the responses coming from our participants, no, who happens to be college students, are the following. So we have social interaction, effective study skills, meetups, access to journals and books, and financial issues. Okay. However, no, in content analysis, it's not enough that you were able to get initial codes and themes, but rather you take note of the counts and occurrences. So what these counts and occurrences mean? So this counts and occurrences means the frequency uh, of words, no, that we gather from our participants. So say for example, for social interaction, 123 here means that there are 123 participants who mentioned that social interaction is considered to be a need for college students. Same thing when we understand 54 here, no? So 54 means that there are 54 students who mentioned that effective study skills is considered to be a need for college students. So again, in content analysis, it is not important that we gather codes. So it's important in content analysis that we take note of the counts or occurrences, because this would indicate how many of our participants have similar responses in relation to the codes derived from their responses. Okay, so similar rule applies in terms of how we analyze content analysis, no? So given that you already have your initial codes, you then realize that these codes can again be grouped together, no? So in this case, you can actually group together social interaction, meetups, and financial issues under the theme of non-academic needs, okay? While effective study skills and access to journals and books are considered to be the academic needs of college students. So again, the thing that we do for content and thematic analysis are just the same. The only difference would be the counts or occurrences that we take note in relation to content analysis, because the purpose of the study is to look for the frequency of words, patterns, and sequence of occurrence of words that we got from our participants. Okay, clear? Right. Now let's move with grounded analysis. Now, grounded analysis is another type of analysis, and this is also called the constant comparison analysis because it's very deep and detailed, meaning that we actually gather our data from various sources. So it's not enough that you only focus on one source of data, such as interview, but what you do is that you also use other sources of data, such as field notes, documents, and pictures, so that you can make a comparison, okay? Look for similarities of differences in relation to events, persons, and situations that can be reflected as your themes or categories, okay? So again, in grounded analysis, we use multiple sources of data and even go through multiple rounds of data collection so that you will be able to look for similarities